Hello, my name's Andy Phil from eTechnics.com, and today we're looking at the Foxconn FlamingBlade Socket 1366 motherboard. What comes included with the motherboard is quite a big selection of bits and bobs. You get a motherboard user's manual, you get a specification summary which has actually got a diagram of the motherboard on it. So if you actually open it up, we can see this diagram of the motherboard, which talks you through exactly what each component on the motherboard actually is, ranging from the CD-in connector, PCI slot, PCI Express slot, system fan connectors and so on. So for the novice user, this bit of information is going to come in really handy. You also get a IDE cable connector. You get, as you'd expect, the driver and utility CD, a product registration card. So on this it tells you to go to the quantumforce.net website and you can register your motherboard there. You get an I/O panel shield plate, 3 standard serial ATA connectors, and you also get a serial ATA to Molex power adapter, as well as a right-angled serial ATA data cable, and also a bridge so that you may use 2 graphics cards in SLI mode. This particular motherboard, being the FlamingBlade, uses the Intel X58 ICH10R chipset. The FlamingBlade GTI uses the ICH10 chipset. The CPU support is an Intel Core i7 and Core i7 Extreme Socket 1366 processors. It has 3 channel DDR3 memory slots which operate at a speed of 1333, 1600 on overclock mode, and 1800 on overclock mode. It supports up to a maximum of 12 gigabytes of memory. Taking a quick look at the cooling on this board, we can see that it is passively cooled. You can see that we have this heatsink over here with FlamingBlade wrote on the top of it. This is to cool down the MOSFETs. We've also got another heatsink over here with Quantum Force wrote on the side. This is to obviously cool the chipset, as well as this sort of style shield badge comes down, so it is protecting and cooling everything that you could possibly need. You can obviously take this off and get an aftermarket cooling solution, but I've always found that the stock cooling solution that motherboards put on when it comes to passive are the best you can possibly get. I do remember motherboards in the past with active cooling solutions, the fan would be so small and so noisy it would end up breaking. That's why a lot of motherboard manufacturers have always gone now with a passive solution instead. Looking at the fan headers on this particular motherboard, there are 3, but only 2 of them you're likely to use. The first one is the CPU fan header down here, the system fan header here, and the last fan header is the one that you're probably least likely to use, which is the North Bridge fan header. Obviously you could use this for a system fan, but it is designed for a North Bridge fan, but by this motherboard having a passive cooling solution, you're only really going to get that fan header to come into play if you change the cooling on this board. As with all motherboards, there's various different connections for your case. This ranges from front panel connectors, USB connectors, audio connectors, so we're just going to have a quick look at them now. Straight away on this board you can see that there's 2 buttons over here. These are actually power buttons and reset buttons. This board is aimed at the overclocking market, the extreme market as it were, enthusiasts, and due to that it has got these buttons on there so that if you are an enthusiast like myself and you've got your motherboard out of a case, which I have, then it's just easy to turn on, to reset and so forth. Next to these buttons we can see these brightly coloured headers here. These are for your front panel connectors. So this ranges from the power button to the reset button, reset LED, hard drive LED and so on. Also next to this we can see the 2 front panel USB connectors. And further down towards the back of the board we can see the front panel audio connectors, which ranges from the SP-DIF connector, the standard analog audio connector, and a CD-in connector. There is one more header which sort of constitutes as a front panel connector, but you will find that a lot of people won't actually have the facility to do this because a lot of cases don't have speakers in them anymore, but you have got your speaker header located here. When connecting hard drives or IDE devices, obviously you need the connectors for it. So talking through some of the main connectors on this board now, we have the floppy connector over here for the very nostalgic people who still use floppy drives. For the slightly more up to date, we have the IDE connector for CD, DVD, rewriters, hard drives and so forth. And also next to this you can see that we've got the 6 serial ATA ports. These serial ATA ports, there are 6 of them. There is also 2 eSATA ports, which we will talk about in a little bit more detail further on in the review. But these serial ATA ports operate at a speed of 3 gig per second and also support RAID 0, 1, 5 and 10. Now taking a look at the various different expansion ports on the motherboard, we can see that we have one PCI Express 2.0 1x port, one PCI Express 2.0 4x port, two PCI Express 2.0 16x ports, which obviously are for graphics cards, and two legacy PCI ports. With regards to motherboards, obviously they need power, and there is two ports on this motherboard for ATX power connectors. We have this one down here, which is a 24-pin ATX power connector. Obviously you can use a 20-pin, but we do recommend, especially with a motherboard like this, which is going to use quite a bit of power, to use a 24-pin adapter for more stability, especially if you're overclocking as well. And also located up the top right of the board, we can see there's an 8-pin connector. Obviously with this one as well, depending on your power supply, you could use a 4-pin, but once again we do recommend using the full 8 pins. Obviously you might have a power supply that hasn't got a 24-pin and an 8-pin, but you can get adapters for this, and if not, you should be upgrading your power supply if you are looking at purchasing this particular motherboard. Looking at the I/O panel on the rear of the motherboard now, we can see that there's lots of various different connections. We've got a PS2 keyboard connection. We have two USB ports here, another two here, another two here, another two here, two eSATA ports, two gigabit LAN ports, and optical audio, because this has got 7.1 channel HD gaming audio. Of course we've got the standard audio over here, which is going to be 8 channel audio. And there is another button on the back of the motherboard which is really interesting for enthusiasts like ourselves. We have this button here with an exclamation in a triangle. By pressing this button, it will actually reset CMOS, and there is another one of these buttons on the motherboard which is located here. There's not a lot I can really say about this board that I haven't already said in the review. The overall styling of the packaging is fantastic, loads of information on the actual packaging telling you about what's included, what the features are, and when you open it up you've got the sort of two slots, one for the motherboard and one for all the accessories. I mean, you look at the amount of serial ATA cables that came with the board, you're not going to be without any accessories that you don't already have with the board or need. With regards to the overall styling of the board, I do love the whole colour scheme with the red and the black. I think it goes really, really nicely together, and the fact that it's passively cooled. I really like the design that they've actually tried to make it look like a sort of shield badge, that kind of thing. Really, really happy with that. The amount of features on the board as well is absolutely fantastic with regards to how much memory it can take, the CPU support. You can get a Core i7 normal chip as well as the Extreme series, which yes, you are looking at a lot of money, but it all depends on whether you want the best bang for your buck basically. And the fact that you can overclock with this board quite freely and quite easily, I'm really pleased with the board overall in general. Looking at the benchmarks, you can't really fault them. I mean, the 3D mark score is absolutely fantastic considering we was only using a 5750, which is our standard graphics card for benchmarking with. Also in regards to the CPU arithmetic tests, the memory latency, the speed factor, they all gave really, really good results, so I am really pleased with this board. There's nothing really that I can fault on the board at all. The price, you're looking at around £140, which isn't too bad for an i7 board. So there's no other score I can really give it, but 5 out of 5 stars.